Krishna, you are the co-founder and CEO of Fiddler, a platform to monitor, observe, analyze, and explain your machine learning models in production, with an overall mission to make AI trustworthy for all enterprises. So why did you choose that specific problem of building trust in AI?
Yeah, I mean, I've had like 15 years of my career spending on like infrastructure projects, like whether that's search infrastructure, data infra, or machine learning infrastructure at Facebook. But when I was working at Facebook, we ran into this very interesting problem around, we had a lot of machine learning models powering our core products like newsfeed, ads, and they became very complex over time. And we saw an opportunity to kind of build a monitoring and analysis and explainability tool in that workflow that can connect to all of your models and give you these insights continuously. And that was a hypothesis. It was as this was a new category that we wanted to create. And fortunately, here we are 3.5 years later. This category is now thriving, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of customers, and we have active deployments as well today.
Great. Let's, if you will, let's go through a quick round of definitions just to help anchor the conversation, like in sort of 30 seconds or less per term. I want to start with explainability, which you mentioned. What does that mean in the context of machine learning?
Yeah, so there are essentially two things that are very unique about a machine learning model. So at the end of the day, a machine learning model is a software artifact, right? It is trained using a historical data set. So it's essentially recognizing patterns in a data set and encoding in some sort of a structure. It could be a decision tree, it could be a neural network, or whatever structure that is. And it then can be applied to infer new predictions on new data, right? That's basically what machine learning is at the end of the day. The structures that the machine learning models train are not human interpretable, in the sense that if you want to understand how a neural network or a deep neural network is operating in detecting in a particular image to be a cat versus a dog, or a model could be classifying a transaction to be a fraudulent transaction or a non-fraudulent transaction. If you want to know why it is doing, that's the black box. It's not like a traditional software where if I had written a traditional piece of software where I've encoded all these instructions in the form of code, I can actually look into the code line by line, and a developer could actually understand how it works and debug it. For a machine learning model, it's not possible to do it. So that's number one. Number two is these models are not static entities. Unlike traditional software, the quality of the model is highly dependent on the data it was trained with. And so if that data changes over time or shifts over time, then your model quality can deteriorate over time. Those are the two problems where you would need transparency or explainability or visibility into how the model is working.
Great. And I guess you alluded to this, but like bias detection.
Yeah, it's part of the same problem. Now, so for example, let's say I trained a face recognition model. We've all been aware of all the problems of face recognition AI systems, right? And based on the population that you have trained the AI system, it can be very good at recognizing certain kind of people, but when you have not, so let's say if it's not trained on, say, Asian people or African Americans, it may not be able to do well. And we have seen several incidents like this, right? So the most popular one in our recent history was the Apple Card gender bias issue, where when Apple rolled out their credit card, a lot of customers complained that, hey, I'm getting very different credit limits between myself and my spouse, even though we seem to have the same salary and similar FICO score and whatnot, and almost like 10 times in difference in credit limits, right? And how is it happening? It could be possible that when you build these models, you may not have the training data in a balanced manner. You may not have all the populations represented. Proxy bias entering into your model. For example, let's say if you use zip code as a way to, as a feature in your model to determine credit risk. We all know zip code is a very has a high, sort of proxy, high correlation with like race and ethnicity of people. So now you can actually introduce a proxy bias into the model by using features like that.
What's your sense of the level of sort of like awareness of those problems? I mean, it seems to logically follow that, first of all, you need to have your data sort of part of the house in order. Then you have to have your machine learning, models and your teams and your infrastructure. Then you worry about this. Like, are we at the stage where people are worrying actively about this?
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously two types of companies in the world. Companies who have invested a lot of energy and money and people in data and kind of mature data infrastructure, and are now leveraging that benefits of it with machine learning and AI, right? We work with a lot of companies in that sort of side of the world where they're basically trying to productionize machine learning models, and they're looking for these monitoring. And most of these customers, when we spoke to them, were trying to retrofit existing DevOps monitoring tools. Say, one of the customers was using Splunk with SageMaker. They would train their models, deploy their models, and they would try to kind of retrofit Splunk, which is a great tool for DevOps monitoring, but kind of like retrofit it for model monitoring. Same thing with like a lot of customers would use Tableau or Datadog or sort of homegrown, sort of open source tools like Grafana. So, and they had to do a whole bunch of work upfront, right? Creating, custom pipelines that calculate drift, custom pipeline that calculate accuracy and whatnot, and, explainability algorithms and whatnot. And so the effort, that they're putting, sort of after a point was not something that was not giving them any business ROI, right? So it's Fiddler provides automated packaging all of this functionality so that you can point your log data coming out of your models and you can quickly get those insights. And so that was so in the sense, like we kind of uncovered this category. So we're working with customers that were already kind of doing it because there was nothing else at the time. And when we started working with them, we uncovered that the post-production model monitoring is something completely unaddressed. And so we've started working on building the product.
What is a product? Is that like, do you have like different modules for like explainability, for drift, for model management? Like how's the product sort of structured?
Yeah, so it's like a layered cake. So essentially, the base layer, our customers, a lot of our customers use Fiddler for model monitoring. But we have a lot of other customers that, and especially in regulated industry, that use it for both model validation, like pre-production model validation and post-production model monitoring. Model validation is quite important in a fintech or a bank setting because you have to understand how your models are working and actually get buy-in and from other stakeholders in your company. Could be compliance stakeholders, could be business stakeholders, before you push the model to production. Unlike say consumer internet company, you can't really afford to do online experiments with freshly created models, right? So model validation is a big use case for us. And then we are now seeing that model audits, where a lot of companies, especially again in sort of regulated or semi-regulated sectors, they are spending a lot of people and money and time to create reports around how their models work for third-party auditing companies. And this is where we are finding an opportunity to help them. This is where they're trying to figure out, is my model fair? How is my model working across these different segments and whatnot? And so that's the third use case that's actually emerging for us.
So maybe zooming back out.
Yeah.
So there's that category that people are probably familiar with of MLOps.
Yeah.
Where does that fit? Where do you position, prepping for this? I read something that you guys wrote about the MLOps life cycle. Right. It sounded like you were carving out a category as part of that. Yep. Called model performance management. Right. You also had like something like you guys have like some very good sort of like category names. There was like what was it, like XAI for like explainable AI? Yeah,
we started with explainable AI, and we sort of like which is obviously like the model explainability stuff that we started, and then we expanded it to like model performance management that covers model monitoring and sort of bias detection and kind of, it's sort of inspired from this application performance management, which has been very successful in the DevOps world. And we're trying to, bring that into the MLOps world, right? So the MPM, we want MPM to be the category which represents the set of tools that you need to continuously monitor and observe your machine learning models at scale.
Great. So in that MLOps life cycle, so what part do you cover? What part do you not cover? And what else should people be thinking about to have a full MLOps solution?
Yeah. So essentially, we come into picture when you're deploying models to production. Essentially we work with teams with, data scientists, even with a handful of models, right? So today a lot of teams start with like 5-6 models and running in production, and they quickly see that, hey, by having Fiddler, I can increase model velocity. I can go from 5 to 50 models very quickly because I have standardized model monitoring for my team. Everyone knows like what needs to be checked and how models are working, and there's alerting and sort of I've basically made sure that we're de-risking a lot of our models. So that's one of the biggest values that we provide for customers, that we can increase their model velocity, and at the same time we help like C-level execs make sure like they have peace of mind that models are being monitored, that people on the ground that actually are receiving alerts. They can actually go they can get shared reports and dashboards on how the models are working, and go and I can ask questions. Now, in terms of like, there are two, as I said, there are two value props that we provide. Essentially pre-production model validation, before you deploy the model, how is the model is working, and post-production model monitoring. So in some ways we fit nicely with an ML ecosystem, working with like an ML platform, say a SageMaker or H2O, or any of these ML platforms out there that are helping customers train models, or even open source modeling frameworks. So we can be a really nice plugin into those services. And you can actually, use like say Fiddler plus SageMaker or Fiddler plus Databricks. A lot of our customers use that combination to, to sort of train, deploy models on SageMaker, and then monitor and analyze them in Fiddler.
Great. So maybe to close 2-3 minutes on the business, who's a good customer for you, which types of companies, which industries, any sort of like names or case studies you can briefly talk about?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a lot of customers that are on our website, in terms of logos. We have worked with a lot of financial services companies that are deploying machine learning models. The reason they're interesting to us are, there is a lot of appetite to move from quantitative models to machine learning models. They're seeing a huge ROI as they see the shift. They've been building models for a long, long time. If you look at banks, hedge funds, fintechs, investment companies, they see they're having access to these unstructured data and these ML frameworks, and so they're able to like move from quant models to machine learning models with high ROIs. And that's where, but they're also in a regulated environment, right? So they have to make sure that they have explainability around models, monitoring around models, and so this is a sweet spot for us as we work with like companies. But we also offer Fiddler. Fiddler is available for customers in ad tech, e-commerce, just SaaS companies trying to build models for like AI-based products for their enterprise customers. So but yeah, financial services is basically our major sort of customer segment today.
Maybe as a last question, and again, still like zooming back out, like what's your experience on the ground of where we are in the, the overall cycle of actually deploying AI in the enterprise? I mean, there's something that, one hears from time to time is that, yes, companies have deployed, like the more advanced companies have deployed ML and AI, but basically it's like one model. It's not like 20. Is that what you're saying as well?
It's still in the first innings, I would say. I think it's, as I said, a lot of our customers that talk to us have, less than 10 models or maybe tens of models, right? But the growth that they're projecting is to like, hundreds of models, or if you're a large company, thousands of models, right? And one of the things that you're seeing is a lot of data scientists are being minted by grad schools, and a lot of new programs. In fact, like I was talking to a cousin of mine who was applying for undergrad courses. The top program for undergrads is not bachelor's in computer science anymore. It's actually bachelor's in data science. So you see the shift is actually, there's like a lot more ML engineers and data scientists coming out from, people reskilling themselves, new sort of people coming out of schools. So we see a secular trend where all these people would go into these companies and they would build models. And so, yeah, but in terms of its evolution life cycle is still in the first innings of a game. And, but we see like, the growth, like, like happening much, much faster.
Great. Well, that bodes incredibly well for the future of Fiddler. So it sounds like you had a perfect timing on the market. So thanks for coming by, showing us the product, telling us about Fiddler. Yep. Hopefully people have learned a bunch. I've certainly enjoyed the conversation. So that's a wrap for today's event. Today's live recording. So again, anyone interested in the topic, please go to our YouTube channel, Driven NYC, subscribe to it, tell your friends about it, and stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be able to announce some in-person events very soon. So thanks everyone, and we will see you next time. Thanks again, Krishna.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. Thanks. Bye-bye.